Hare Krishna everyone, welcome back to Shravanam Diaries podcast. I'm your host Sulalita Devidasi and we are continuing to read Teachings of Lord Caitanya by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Starting chapter 26, the Bhattacharya is converted. For the impersonalist and voidist philosophers, the next world is a world of senseless eternity and bliss. The voidist philosophers want to establish that ultimately everything is senseless, and the impersonalists want to establish that in the next world there is simply knowledge without any activities. Thus, less intelligent salvationists try to carry imperfect knowledge into the sphere of perfect spiritual activity. Because the impersonalist experiences material activity as miserable, he wants to establish spiritual life without activity. He cannot understand the activities of devotional service. Indeed, spiritual activity in devotional service is unintelligible to the voidist philosophers and impersonalists. The Vaishnava philosophers know perfectly well that the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, can never be impersonal or void, because he possesses innumerable potencies. Through his innumerable energies, he can present himself in multiple forms and still remain the absolute supreme personality of Godhead. Thus, despite expanding himself in multiple forms and diffusing his innumerable energies, he can maintain his transcendental position. Thus, Lord Caitanya exposed many defects in the Mayavada philosophy, and although the Bhattacharya tried to establish himself by logic and word jugglery, Lord Caitanya was able to defend himself from his attacks. The Lord established that the Vedic literature is meant for three things: understanding our relationship with the absolute supreme personality of Godhead, acting according to that understanding, and achieving the highest perfection of life, love of Godhead. Anyone who tries to prove that the Vedic literature aims at anything else must be a victim of his own imagination. So three things: understanding our relationship, acting according to that, and achieving love of Godhead. The Lord then quoted some verses from the Puranas by which he established that Shankaracharya was ordered to teach Mayavada philosophy by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He quoted a verse from the Padma Purana, Uttarakhanda 62.31, in which it is stated that the Lord ordered Mahadev, Lord Shiva, to present some imaginary interpretation of the Vedic literature to divert people from the actual purpose of the Vedas. Quote, "In this way, try to make them atheists," the Lord said. "After that, they can be engaged in producing more population." Unquote. It is also stated in the Padma Purana, Uttarakhanda 25.7, that Lord Shiva explained to his wife Parvati that in the age of Kali he would come in the form of a Brahmana to preach an imperfect interpretation of the Vedas known as Mayavada, which in actuality is but a second edition of atheistic Buddhist philosophy. The Bhattacharya was overwhelmed by these explanations of Lord Caitanya. After hearing Mayavada philosophy explained by Lord Caitanya, he could not speak. After he had remained silent for some time, Lord Caitanya said to him, "My dear Bhattacharya, don't be astonished by this explanation. Please take it from me that the devotional service of the Supreme Lord is the highest perfectional stage of human understanding. Indeed, it is so attractive that even those who are already liberated become devotees by the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead." Unquote. There are many such conversions in the Vedic literature. For instance, in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.7.10, the famous Atmarama verse describes how impersonalist sages who are absorbed in self-realization and liberated from all material attachments become attracted to devotional service by the various activities of Lord Kṛṣṇa. Such are the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, in pure consciousness, the living entity understands himself as the eternal servant of the Supreme Lord. Under the spell of illusion, a person accepts the gross and subtle bodies as his self. Such a conception is the basis of the doctrine of transference from spirit to matter. But the part and parcel of the Supreme is not eternally subjected to gross and subtle bodily life. The gross and subtle coverings do not comprise the living entity's eternal form. They can be changed, or the living entity can be freed entirely from material existence. While the living entity is under the illusion that he is the body and mind, however, he has certainly transferred his position from spirit to matter. One moment. Mayavadi philosophers, taking advantage of this doctrine of transference, say that the living entity is under the wrong impression when he thinks himself to be part and parcel of the Supreme. They maintain that the living entity is the Supreme himself. This doctrine cannot be tenable. The Bhattacharya then asked Lord Caitanya to explain the famous Atmarama verse, for he desired to hear it from the Lord himself. Lord Caitanya replied that, first of all, the Bhattacharya should explain the verse according to his own understanding. And then Lord Caitanya would explain it. The Bhattacharya then began to explain the Atmarama verse using his methods of logic and grammar. Thus, he explained the Atmarama shloka in 9 different ways. The Lord appreciated his erudite scholarship in explaining the verse and said, "My dear Bhattacharya, I know that you are a personal manifestation of the learned scholar Brihaspati and can explain any portion of the Shastras nicely. Yet, your explanation is more or less based on academic education only. But there is another explanation beside the academic, scholarly one." Unquote. Then, at the request of the Bhattacharya, Lord Caitanya explained the Atmarama shloka. The words of the verse were analyzed thus: first Atmarama, second Cha, 3 Munayaha, 4 Nirgranta, 5 Api, 6 Urukrame, 7 Kurvanti, 8 Ahaitukim, 9 Bhaktim, 10 Itham Bhuta Guna, 11 Hari. In brackets, this verse has already been explained in connection with the Lord's teachings to Sanatana Goswami. Without mentioning the 9 explanations of the Bhattacharya, Lord Caitanya explained the verse by analyzing these 11 words. In this way, he expounded 18 different explanations of the verse. In summary, he said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is full of innumerable potencies. No one can estimate how many transcendental qualities he possesses. His qualities are always inconceivable, and all processes of self-realization inquire in a general way into the potencies and qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the devotees of the Lord immediately accept the inconceivable position of the Lord. Lord Caitanya explained that even great liberated souls like the Kumaras and Shukadeva Goswami were also attracted to the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Lord. The Bhattacharya appreciated Lord Caitanya's explanation, and he concluded that Lord Caitanya was none other than Kṛṣṇa himself. The Bhattacharya then began to deprecate his own position, relating that he had at first considered Lord Caitanya to be an ordinary human being and therefore committed a great offense. He then fell down at the lotus feet of Lord Caitanya, deprecating himself, and requested the Lord to show his causeless mercy to him. Lord Caitanya appreciated the humility of this great scholar and therefore exhibited his own form, first with 4 hands and then with 6 hands, Shadbhuja. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya then repeatedly fell down at the lotus feet of the Lord and composed various prayers to him. He was undoubtedly a great scholar, and after receiving the causeless mercy of the Lord, he was empowered to explain the Lord's activities in different ways. For instance, he was able to express the benefit of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It is said that at this time, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya composed 100 verses in appreciation of the Lord's activities, and that those verses were so great that they could not be surpassed even by Brihaspati, the greatest learned scholar in the heavenly planets. The Lord was very much pleased to hear these 100 verses, and he embraced the Bhattacharya. The Bhattacharya became overwhelmed with ecstasy by the Lord's touch, and he practically fell unconscious. He cried, trembled, shivered, and perspired, and sometimes he danced and sang and fell at the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya. The Bhattacharya's brother-in-law, Gopinatha Acharya, and the devotees of the Lord were surprised to see that the Bhattacharya transformed into a great devotee. Jai. We will stop here for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Excuse me for my voice, it's winter. Hare Krishna. So, the link to this book is in the description. Please check out our website, shravanamdiaries.com, and we shall see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna.